Hey, QED Coders, this is Michael. Jan is out on vacation today, as you will be for the next 3 weeks, this and then the next 2 weeks after this. So, we are going to go over some of the patterns that I've learned while building an application using Jinaga.net on MAUI. Last night, I presented Jinaga.net on MAUI to the DFW Mobile.net users group. So we had a great discussion, lots of and I wonder, and great questions from the audience there. So hopefully we will see a whole bunch of new applications coming out of that group, and we will make the mobile landscape a better place. So some of the things that we talked about were different ways that you could integrate Jinaga.net into a MAUI application. How do you make that connection? And so I discovered a few view model patterns that that kind of come up as we're building MAUI applications. I don't know that this is a complete list, but it's a good start. It'll give you some inspiration when you're starting to build your own MAUI application using Jinaga.net. So I wanted to take this opportunity to go through some of those patterns and let's see what you can do with Jinaga.net on MAUI. So to kick things off, I'm going to, that was unexpected, I am going to switch to our good friend, screen share live. There we go. All right. So we've got our good friend .NET Interactive Notebooks. Oh, sorry, Polyglot Notebooks. It still says .NET Interactive up here. I guess, yeah, that .NET Interactive is the runtime. But now this is Polyglot Notebooks, because it supports several different languages. Funny enough, Polyglot Notebooks, as far as I can tell, doesn't support... Yeah, it does support Python. Yeah, I just didn't see it in the drop-down list. Anyway, we've started this notebook by bringing in Jinaga and Jinaga GraphViz, currently on 11.1. Getting close to the 1.0 release, but still a few things that I need to finish up there. And for this notebook, I set up an authentication provider. The reason I did this is so that I could set the authorization header and connect to a secured replicator up in the cloud. So y'all might remember the replicator as a service up here at dev.jinaga.com. I've been using this one right here for the blog MAUI sample application. So I've got configured login with Apple, login with Google, and setting up the security rules, authorization and distribution. So as this is pretending to be the end user, and it's logging in using a bearer token that I just generated by using Postman to log in, grab the auth2 token. And I stuck that inside of settings.json, which I am not going to open, but that's where it stores those things. So let's load settings.json, let's parse it, let's get the HTTP endpoint and the authorization token out of there, and Jinaga client create. So we have now a Jinaga client connected to that replicator. This right here is the model for blog MAUI. Let's go ahead and see what that model looks like. So let's go to code. I will do render facts. No, I want to render types. And let's start kind of at the beginning. So we've got the site type of, and I know we'll have the site name and the site domain, just to kind of start things off. So let's render that. I'll take the survey later. And so that is what we're looking at here. A site was created by a particular user, and then it has a name and a domain. Those are mutable properties, so we're following the mutable property pattern. So let's suppose that I wanted to get all of the sites for a given user. This would be the specification I use for that. I've got site deleted and site restored. Let's go ahead and add those in here. Site deleted and site restored, so we can see a more complete picture of the model that we're working with. So now you can see that in addition to setting the name and the domain, I can delete the site, and then I can restore that deleted site. So if I make a mistake and I delete something, I can bring it back from the recycle bin and undelete it. So that's what this site restored does for me. So first of all, how do I get all of the sites for a particular user? Well, I find all of the sites where the creator is this user, and then I also want just the sites that do not have a blog site deleted. So if I've deleted that site, exclude it from the list. Now, however, if I have deleted that site but then I restored it, then don't consider that deleted fact. So I'm only interested in the sites that don't have a deleted, which don't have restored. So that's what I'm saying here. From all the sites in facts of type site, where the creator is this user, and there are not any site deleted, where the deleted site is this site, such that there are not any site restored, where the restored deleted is that deleted. So if we restore it, ignore the deleted. If we delete it, ignore the site. Okay, so that's our delete and restore pattern. And now once we've got that, we go down to, I want to select a new projection. I want some information about those sites. So give me their hash as ID, and give me their names by writing another specification and getting all of the site names for that site, and give me the domains. So here we see another not facts.any, similar to what we saw up here. This is looking for the site names or the site domains, where the next does not point back to this name. It does not have a prior collection that contains this name. So all the names that have not been superseded. Those are the ones that I want. So here, go ahead and log in. So we've got that user that generated that token, and then query for those sites. And when I do so, I get these projections. So I've got the name QED code live. We changed that name live on stage. And Michael L. Perry on iPhone. We changed that name on the iPhone simulator on stage. So it's giving you the current name and domain of those sites. So what now if I want to put this onto a mobile application? Let's bring up Visual Studio. And I just updated Visual Studio, so it might take a little bit for this to start up. And I'm going to want to data bind that to a view model so that I can then show that on the view. What I'm going to see once I get in here, coffee tastes better out of a .NET Rocks mug. All right, it's still loading. Let's let's pop over here so we can kind of see the code, and then we'll look at it in action. So we've got our site list view model. So this is a view model using observable objects from the MVVM community toolkit. So that's a great way to quickly get up and running with MVVM. It implements iNotify property change using source generators. So if I say observable property, then this becomes an observable property. It has a capital L loading that fires I notify property changed and is backed by this field. So observable object gives me that. And then observable collection, this is just the system collections object model observable collection. This is something that you can data bind to in order to see things showing up on the list. So this is going to be my collection of sites. And this is going to use the site header view model. Let's take a look at that one. And we'll see this is also an observable object. It's got a name and a URL. So we've got those two properties that it sets up. It also has a select command. We won't get into that, but we're mostly concerned with these two properties. So how do I run a specification, generate a bunch of sites, and set those properties? That's what I want, but I want it to be observable. So this is how I do that. This load method, we call that whenever the view is appearing, and so it's going to look to see, do I have a logged in user? If not, I'm going to get out of here. But if I do have a logged in user, then set loading to true, get my little spinny thing. Here's my specification. That looks familiar. That's all the sites that have not been deleted, where the deleted is not restored. And this is all of the names and all of the domains. But this is new. Facts.observable. What is going on here? So when we looked at this, we didn't have facts.observable. We just used the link statement right here. Just give me all of the names, give me all the domains. And that gave me back an array, a collection of names and domains. In this case, I don't want the collection because I want this thing to be continually observable. I want to be notified when something new shows up, when I have renamed the site, when I've changed the site's domain. So I call facts observable, and now that converts it from an iQueryable to an iObservable collection. Now, this is a Jinaga observers iObservable collection, not the observable collection here. So we can't directly data bind to it. But what that gives me is the ability to call onAdded. So now I've got some code that I can run whenever I add a new name to this collection. I've got some code right here that I can run whenever I add a new domain to this collection. Now, in order to kick all of this off, I do a Jinaga client.watch. Over here, I did a Jinaga client.query. So query runs it once, gives me back the results, and it's done. Watch creates an observer, and it keeps watching. It keeps waiting for new facts to show up that match this specification. And so when they come up, then it creates a projection. The shape of that projection is we've got a site, we've got names, and we've got domains, both of those being observable collections. That shape is the shape we defined here. That was our anonymous object, and we just used that shape. If I wanted to give this a name, I could do that. Then I would have to declare site to be a site, observable to be an iObservable collection of, in this case, string, and domain the same thing. So anonymous or typed, your choice. Easier to do anonymous because now you can make a change up here, and it just changes the type, and then you can use it down here. Nice. So we're going to watch. Whenever a projection comes in, we're going to create a brand new site header view model. Remember that projection is not observable. It doesn't implement a notify property changed, I should say. So it's not a view model. That projection is something that comes from Jinaga, and Jinaga doesn't assume that you're using MVVM. So now here you create a site header view model. That's what we already looked at here. It's got a couple of observable properties, and we add that to the site's observable collection, this being the one that you can data bind to, this one. So that makes it show up on the view by adding it. And then we set up our listeners for unadded names and domains, change the property in that site header view model. And then right here, if that site is ever deleted, so we learn about a new site deleted fact, then it's going to come back through here and say, I know I told you about this projection, but let's get rid of it now. And so it's going to call this function, this lambda, and that's just going to remove it from the sites collection. So create it up here, remove it whenever you're done with it. That is how you connect a specification to a view model. And now let's check to make sure that I can run this application now, and we will see how that looks on the simulator. Starting up the emulator. So we'll let that keep going, and here it comes. So yeah, I have to come over here so I don't bump into my head. Okay. All right, so let that load. In the meantime, let's take a look at this. What it's also doing is it's monitoring that observer. So what does that mean? So by calling Jinaga client.watch, notice oh wait, this is not an asynchronous method. This just sets up the observer. When it's done with that, nothing has actually happened. It hasn't hit the replicator. It hasn't loaded anything from the database. It just set up the observer. So what we can do is monitor that observer right here. And that gives us a couple of tasks that we can await. So cached is a task that gets resolved whenever you've loaded it from local storage. That's the thing that happens first. We want to be offline first. And then once you've got cached, if that resolves to true, if that resolves to false, so the thing that we're looking for was not in the cache, then let's go ahead and await loaded. It's going to do this anyway. It's going to go ahead and hit the replicator, but we only want to inform the user that it's still working if nothing got actually loaded from the cache. So if the cache was stale, this was the first time we ran the application, it's going to actually keep the spinner going while it's hitting the replicator. But if you've brought the application up, it's going to load it from cache, get the user immediately back to the user interface, and then hit the replicator and try to get fresh data. Meanwhile, the user is still just looking at their application. They've got their data. It's offline first. Okay, the pixel has started. It should be working on deploying the application. So we will give that another minute. So this all this is all there to make sure that we can turn the loading back to false whenever we're done with whatever we need to do. And if we catch an error during that process, then we'll log that to the logger. So this monitor method this is one of those patterns that I found I really need to do this over and over again. So most likely, monitor is going to end up being part of the library. Right here, Jinaga.MAUI is growing inside of blog MAUI. So we've got authentication code in there, doing all the OAuth 2 stuff. And so it's also going to have some features that are there to make view models easier. And this is probably going to be one of those features. Okay, so how do we manage this view model? So I mentioned we've got this load method, and it creates an observer. That means that we also must have an unload method that destroys the observer. So this is going to call stop, which stops the watch. So any new facts is no longer going to call this lambda. It just shuts it off and then clears that observer out. So that means I need to call load and unload. If I take a look here at my page, my code behind, then I call load during appearing and unload during disappearing. This is also going to be something that I merge into Jinaga MAUI so that we can manage the lifecycle of view models a bit better. But it's going to be a bit more interesting than just appearing and disappearing. I will show you what I mean inside of this application. So let's go ahead and log in. Even though I am running the Android emulator, I can still log in with either Apple or Google. Let's log in with Apple. And yep. Don't sync, just log me in. I wonder if this has still got my Apple ID cached. I might have to copy it. Let's try Perry. Yeah, mallardsoft.com. Old domain for Mallard Software Designs. So yeah, not happy with that. Let's go off screen here and grab my Apple password. Copy that and take this off screen too, just in case it flashes. I don't think it does, but just in case it flashes. One of the characters did flash. Haha. Okay. Two-factor authentication, all that fun stuff. This I don't mind you seeing because it's a one-time password. I trust this browser. And continue. And if I were fast enough, I would have hit that save password button. But that's fine. We are logged in using Apple. And now we've got a token. And we hit the replicator. And we get back our stuff. So we've got QED code live. We've got Michael Perry on iPhone. And I'll show you where these values came from. So that is what just happened here. We, let me go back to monitor. We hit the cache. This was a brand new phone. It didn't know who we were. So the cache was empty, was in cache, came back as false. And then we awaited the loaded task. Now you see this other thing here. I should probably talk about this. Jinaga client.push. This is telling it that while you're at it, if there's anything in the queue, go ahead and push it up. So this is something that you kind of sprinkle through your code that, at certain points while the user is using the application, they're waiting for stuff anyway. So let's go ahead and take that opportunity to clear out the queue. So we go ahead and push those things up. This I need to figure out what's the right strategy to make recommendations and then allow developers to change the strategy for when they call push. So all that stuff I need to iron out, and that's why I'm building Jinaga MAUI inside of an application. So we've got all of that, and we have grabbed these sites, and then when we saw this name, we set the name property. When we saw this domain, we set the domain property, and it all got data bound. So it's all there. What's this green up here? Let's talk about another view model. This one is way up here. This is the app shell view model. And so I use this view model to bind to the app state. Status. What we're seeing there is status. So with the status, what I can do is on status changed, I call this little function. Let's look at what that function does. There we go. If we have an error on save, so we have some some data local, we've tried to push it to the replicator, and there was an error. It was not able to save those facts. And the queue length is greater than 0, so we actually do have something in the queue. So that means if we were to go offline right now, then we've got some data on the phone that nobody else has seen. So we're in danger of losing data. So the status is red. And we populate the error. So now, that's the most important one. But if we're okay on save, and we find, okay, this explains a defect that I saw. Yellow doesn't mean what I thought it meant. So what this is saying is that if I am in the middle of saving something and the queue length is 0, yeah, that's just wrong. That's not the right condition at all. What I want this to say is that if I have a receive error, then I set the status to yellow, and I have the last load error. Otherwise, the status is green, and we don't have any errors. So the idea behind this, once I get this fixed, is that this will be a good status indicator for the user to tell them how they're doing. Now, rather than actually just showing this status value, what I intend to do is data bind that to some visual state, so you see some indicator that everything's good. You've got a load error, you've got a save error. And so I've moved that logic all the way up to the app shell view model so that anybody could, any one of the views could data bind to that property. And so I data bound to it right here in the list. What I intend to do is that the app shell view model actually controls some things around the edge, and so then I will put that status information somewhere around the edge. Probably even shove that up into the status area here. So rather than showing it on the face of the application, put that up in the dynamic island if you're on iPhone, wherever, just up there somewhere, out of the way. But still, someplace you might notice it. So that is app status, and so that's another view model pattern that I've discovered is quite useful. Okay. Now, before we go on to other view model patterns, let me show you where these values came from. So I'll come back to the Polyglot notebook here, and I'm going to scroll on down, and here we've got 3 different specifications that give me all of the sites, and then the site names, and then the site domains, and it's actually returning those facts. That way, I can query all 3 of them and render those 3 sets of facts. So now I've got all of the stuff that is in the replicator, and then on the mobile device in the SQLite database. So for a particular Jinaga user being a fact identified by a public key, we've got 2 different sites. So these were created at 2 different times. You can see these times are actually very close together. I just pushed the button. And then for each one of these sites, we've got a name, so we can see the history of name changes here. And we've got a domain. So over here, name, domain. So this history is showing us that we started with the name QED code. And then we changed it. This is what I did on stage last night. We changed it to Mike's School Blog, and we could see that name pop in there. Then we changed it back to QED code, and then, in order to demonstrate a really cool feature, which I will show you in a minute, we changed the name again to QED code live. You might notice this outline right here. This one is bold. This one is just regular. you can see the bolded facts are the ones that are actually returned from these specifications. So if I were to take a look at site names, then I would just see this one name. I would just see this one name. I wouldn't see anything else here. Why is that? Well, you might already have figured that out. If you've got a prior pointer pointing to the fact, then it's not included. This is the only one that does not have a prior pointer pointing to it. It's the current name. That all comes from right here. Yeah, names. We want facts of type site name, where there are not any next site names, where next prior contains the name. So exclude it if there is a next fact. Exclude it if it has been superseded. For this one, there's a next fact. For this one, there's a next. For this one, there's a next. For this one, no next. So that one shows up. So what about this pattern over here? We've got two possible names. And then here we combined those and we got back down to one. So let's demonstrate what would it take in order to have that show up. So when I did this on stage, I did this with my my Apple, my brand new MacBook Pro. So that means that I could bring up an Apple an iPhone emulator. On this one, I can't bring up an iPhone, so let me just stop it and let me try. Yeah, I don't have a second Android emulator set up. Let's see. Oh, why are you doing that again? You've already signed in. Oh, okay. Okay. Here we have the device. Okay, I know what I will do. This is what I will do. So on the device, I'm going to go in here to Qt Code Live. And let's edit that. So I can change this to Qt Code forever. Right, and I can save that. And if I then refresh here, I will see there's my new fact. Let's go ahead and change the name inside of the Polyglot Notebook. So here I've got the site names. So I'm going to use those in order to edit the name. So give me another code block, and I want to a new site name. I want to await Jinaga client fact a new site name. So what do I need in order to provide this new site name? I need the site. Well, which site am I going to talk about? Well, I want the very first site fact. So I will say site facts 0. That's going to give me this one. And then I also need to provide the value, and I'll say edited in Polyglot. And then I'm going to need the list of prior names. So I will send in the site names, but I only want to take that first one. So that will give me this one. So an array containing just this one here. All right, so when I push this button, I should be able to create a new site name. Oh, that's got to be an array, so to array. There we go. So I'm all set up to do an edit here, and so I will come in here and I will get set up to do an edit here. So this is going to be Qt code on Android. Now I'm not going to push save quite yet. And then down here, I'm going to go ahead and create my new site name. Now up here, since the user entered the dialog box, we've kind of frozen things. We don't want things changing underneath them. So now they push save, and notice it grabbed edited in Polyglot. It just learned about that, so it updated its view model. Let's take a look at what the graph shows us now. So now I have this nice little chain of all the different versions of the name, and then all of a sudden right here, boop, it splits. I've got Qt code on Android and edited in Polyglot. So both of these claim that the prior name was Qt code forever, and they're both names of the same site. So which one is correct? Can we use last writer wins? Can we sort them alphabetically? What's our strategy for determining which one is correct? The strategy that I recommend is let the user choose. Here we're showing an indicator that there has been a concurrent edit, a conflict, if you will. This is a conflict-free replicated data type, so by the definition of conflict in CRDTs, it's not a conflict. Both of these things know that there has been a concurrent edit, so no conflict. They both know it. But in usual parlance, people call this a conflict. So we can hit that button. We can see these are the possible values. Somebody changed it to Qt code on Android. Somebody else changed it to edited in Polyglot. And so now you can choose. You can say, okay, I like this one. And then come back, and it fills that in to the edit box. But you can still change that if you want. So the user is still free to say, well, I saw that version, I saw that version. I can say, let's merge them. Or if you've got a library that does an actual text merge experience, then you can provide that here. This being a blog application, I do intend to add that when I implement content. So you've got markdown here, you edit markdown here. You don't want to just pick one markdown or the other, you want it to merge. So I will have a demonstration of how to do that coming up sometime soon. So I say it was edited in Polyglot on Android, and I save it, and now that is the value that I see. What happened here? Well, what happened here is we had these two different versions, and then we created a brand new blog site name, edited in Polyglot on Android as the new value, merging those two priors. So now there's no more conflict. Notice this is the only one that has the bold around it. Rewind a little bit and you'll see that there were bold squares around both of these. There we go. That is how you can implement the merge conflict resolution pattern using an application that just informs the user that a conflict has occurred and gives them the power to resolve it. So how does that look in the view models? So let me bring up my tree again. Let's go back into my blog area. And here we were dealing with the site edit view model. So I said, okay, I am ready to edit my my site name and domain. So that's an observable object. It's got some observable properties. So one of them is the name that I want to show up in the editor window. And so the user can change that name. That's a property that allows get and set from the user's perspective. And then we've got a merge, a mutable, observable property, there we go, that is should merge names. So if this is true, then the button appears. And then these are the name candidates. This one's not observable because I'm going to use this in a slightly different way. So I am on the site edit view. I see the name. I see a button if should merge names is true. And behind the scenes, I've got my list of candidates. How did I get all of this stuff? Well, let's scroll on down to right here. When I create my site edit view model, then I provide it an immutable list of site names. So I have run a query and I've given you these are the names. So you take that list of names and grab all their values, sort them, and give me just the distinct ones, and get that as a list. So now you've got all the distinct names that somebody has entered out there in the world. And then the one that you show to the user is just the first or default. So here's our conflict resolution strategy, sort alphabetically and give you the lowest one. But that's not a true resolution. That's just one that you show as an example to the user because they expect an edit box to have just one value in it. So you have to give them just one value. Pick one. This way, everybody picks the same one. That's why it's conflict-free. This is a deterministic function. And then, if you have more than one candidate, then should merge names is true. If should merge names is true, then you show the button, and that means that you can then hit the button, handle the button, and now you create a merge view model. This one is a general view model. You can use this for any kind of data type. It just shows a list of strings, let you pick one. So so this will probably also end up in Jinaga.MAUI. So with the merge view model, you say, well, these are the candidates, and when you select one, set the name property. That's it. Now, navigate to it, and then it pops up. The user can pick, they can go back. And all they did was set the name property. That's just a way of typing in one of those possible candidates. But of course, the name property is still just a property. They can edit it. And then when they're done, they can save. So this pattern here is also something that shows up quite a bit. So this, I think we want to spend a little bit of time on. When you save the mutable property pattern, then there are really two reasons why you might want to create a new fact. So one of those reasons is that they've changed the value. So the value that is in the repository is different from the property that they just entered. So if it's different, create a new site name. But that's not the only reason. They also might be resolving a conflict. So if you have 0 names or you have multiple names, if you have any number other than one, then this might be a conflict resolution. So you want to take all those names as predecessors and create a new site name that refers to all of them, merging that tree, that graph, down into having one leaf. So those are the two reasons why you might want to create a new site name. So if the user opens the editor and just pushes save, what's going to happen? So if they open the editor and there is no conflict, they didn't see a merge button, so the number of names is equal to 1, and that one and only name right here, its value is equal to the value that's in the window because they didn't change it, then that means you're not going to create a new fact. So we're not going to just create new facts just because they open the editor, hit the save button. So this protects the user from that. But in those two cases where they've changed the name or they're resolving a conflict, then we are going to set a new fact. So that's a pattern that shows up quite a bit. And so I do want to offer some support for that mutable property pattern. Now, this is one of those things that I can't just completely make it go away. I can't make a mutable property look like a property because properties have one value. Mutable properties have candidates. So you do have to understand that, and you do have to choose some way of resolving it programmatically or giving that resolution to the end user. By the way, if you solve it programmatically, don't do that on the mobile device because that just means that every mobile device is going to try to solve it. It's like every time developers pull, if they tried to do merge resolution on everybody else's branches, and then it would just get to be a mess. So if you do solve it programmatically, do that on the server side, just deploy a service that's in the background looking for conflicts and resolving them. But I prefer to give that power to the user. Okay, so those are some of the view model patterns that I've seen. Oh yeah, one last thing here. How did these come about? If I go to the post list view model, right here is where I am creating a new site edit view model and navigating to that page. This is all done inside of, as you can see here, handle edit. So, so I have pressed I've tapped on the edit button up there at the top, the little pencil. So, assuming I have a site, then grab the names of that site, grab the domains of that site, and then give those collections to the site edit view model. So that's one way of handling it. I'm experimenting with other ways of handling it. This means that you're going to get some load behavior when you push the button. So it's going to give you the most up-to-date names and domains when you hit edit. But instead of pausing to load that information, you might want to just use what you already have and bring up the edit. So that means merges, conflicts are going to be a little more likely, but the user doesn't have to wait in order to get into the editor. You can kind of see that time. I'm going to say click, and there it is. And that is this query going all the way to the replicator and coming back. So one way that you can do that, that you can fix that, is if you say query local and query local here. That is a specialization of query that just loads it from the local store. It does not hit the replicator. And so that would still give you the information that you're looking for, but it wouldn't have that delay. It wouldn't have that latency. There'd still be some latency while it's loading it from the local store, but not nearly as much. And if the user happens to be offline during that, then query local is not going to throw. Query, at least right now, will throw. I'm thinking that I might change that. I may make query try, and if it fails, just give you back local. Even if query doesn't throw, trying still might take some time. If it's just offline, airplane mode, then it can be really fast. But if it's on a slow connection, if it doesn't know that the connection is dropped, it might still take some time. So query local is probably your best bet anyway. So that's one way to solve this problem. Another way to solve this problem is way back up here when I set up the observer in the first place. So here I did a Jinaga client.watch, and for this one I am creating a well, let's look at those specifications. So I've got that's the posts in blog. So that one's a little bit different. Okay, this one right here. the names of the site. So I've got a specification, given a site, give me all of its current names, and then do a Jinaga client.watch so that I can set the title property and I can just show the title on this post list view model. So it's primarily here to show a list of posts, but we're going to also show the title of the blog. Here we don't show the domain because that's not something that the user wants to see when they're looking at a list of posts. So we just show the title. And notice here it's getting the name.value, so it's getting just the strings. And it's only keeping the last one that it hears about. So this is kind of the last writer wins. This one is not deterministic because you can't tell what the order of these projections is going to be. But that's an easy way to just give you the current title, but that means you don't have these site name facts anymore. So another way that you could resolve the edit list of candidates is to, inside of this watch, keep track of the list of edits, and then when you hear about a new edit, then get the new projection here. You get the value from that projection, and you display that as the title. But in the meantime, you've still kept a list of all the site names. So that way, when you hit the edit button, you don't have to fetch that list of site names again. So if you follow that pattern, then you would probably also want to put the domains up here, but you're not displaying the domains. So you're fetching the domains even though the user might not hit edit. So it's a trade-off. But if you do that, then you don't even have to do a query local. You get immediately, I hit the button and I go into the edit window. So we've got some different options there. So my plan is to try out those different options, figure out which ones I want to make solid and make them part of Jinaga MAUI. And I might even go so far as to do some source generator magic. So if you look here, remember we talked about observable objects coming from Community Toolkit MVVM component model. That uses source generators to give you these properties that implement a notify property changed. What if there was a source generator that took this specification and generated not just one property, but generated an observable collection of view models, and then generated that view model having these properties, and kept on going until it had the full scope of what it needed. And then you could just write your specification, say, give me a view model based on that specification. Boom. That would be awesome. That's what I'm ultimately trying to work toward. So I'll get there incrementally, and we'll see how far we can get. And wherever we end up, that will become Jinaga.MAUI, and that will be published out there on NuGet for everybody to use. So give that a shot. Try some Jinaga on MAUI for yourself. There we are. Stop sharing. And yeah, tell me how it works out for you. I would really love to hear what new patterns you discover and see if we can get those merged in, have them available to everybody. So thank you very much. I will see you all next week.